Oh
I
boy. Yes. So those of you who got stuck with the meeting on Monday also know that this is a really new thing for me. So if I have glitches, my apologies. It's still a learning process, and we're still not exactly sure which modality we would use. So Tammy's on, and Jim, is that you on the phone? Oops, I got to unmute him. Sorry. Jim, is that you on the phone?
think it's Linda. Isn't that the
Oh,
town
hi,
clerk's
Linda.
office?
Of course, that's her phone number.
Can you
So,
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
and what about the volume levels? I know with the other meeting, my volume was too high and it was troubling. Is this okay for people on the other end?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
And I'm not sure if there's a little phone sign. Does that mean I'm supposed to answer, or are they just coming on automatically? I don't know. Let's see what happens here. Nope, that's Linda. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. I know Jim is going to be here. What we could do is just wait another couple of minutes. I don't know a way to call him unless I called him on my cell phone, but I expect he will be with us very shortly. So it sounds like the road crew is here. Is that right?
Gotta unmute them.
Who do we have from the road crew? Are all three of you there?
Sasha, can you unmute them?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to hear you. So which people do we have all three members of the road crew? That's Josh. Sorry, Josh. And for road crew folks, are all three of you there? Sorry, I have to unmute them as well. I thought people were unmuted. Okay, going back to the road crew. Are all three of you folks there?
Yep, all three of us are here. Me, Mike, and Steve.
Okay, and we don't yet have Greg on. I think Greg was going to be calling in as well. So what's your pleasure, Tammy, in terms of going forward now or waiting a couple of minutes? What do you think would be the best thing to do?
I think because this is new, I would wait a minute. I mean, we're only 2 minutes after, so.
Right. So Tristan,
Sasha?
would you go ahead?
I have a question.
Yes.
Carol just sent me a message, said that she was put on hold. I just wanted to know if you did that.
No, I didn't. Could she try calling in again? Hang up and try calling in again?
Okay, I'll tell her.
Okay. See, thank you, Linda.
Yes, you are.
I was thinking if people needed to, I could give you my home phone and people could call and go, this is what's going on, that's wrong. I did actually do a little bit of training this morning online to try to get a better grasp of how you're supposed to do this with this particular medium. But it's very rudimentary, that's for sure. So it looks like I do have a way to unmute everybody, so I did that. That's good. And
Sasha, are you recording this?
yes, and we do. It says I can take it off putting participants in the waiting room. I think that it says 3 people are waiting, and so that's my problem. I have not admitted them. So here we go, and that's Greg, and that's Jim. All right, Jim, can you hear us? Jim? I see we have Jim's iPad. I'm just going to go through the people we have on at the moment. We have Josh Pitts. We have Mary Lane's iPhone. We have Greg Chamberlain, the road crew, Tammy Farnham, Tristan, and Linda. And then is this Carol? I think it's Carol as well. I recognize her phone number. So,
Yes, that's me.
Pardon me?
I'm here.
Great.
Carol.
Great. I just want to make sure everybody is unmuted. Yeah, they're unmuted so that we don't have anybody who's not able to speak.
And this is Jim Bolts. I'm here too.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I saw you came in, and my apologies for not having admitted you, which was something I was
That's
supposed to. So I think we are ready to go. I'm just going to make sure that everybody is unmuted. It's now 10 o'clock and we have a special select board meeting. The issue, and this is being recorded as is required by the Secretary of State's office. The issues are to address the issue of employee compensation and also to extend the time under the current the current open records law for the minutes of the meeting on Monday or any other select board meeting to be extended based on sometimes staff shortages relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. So who would like to start out talking? Should we hear from the employees first about what they'd like us to know relating to issues of compensation? I just would like to make sure everybody gets a chance to have a voice on this.
So I
Does somebody
think
make? Go ahead.
So I think the first thing that we need to do, the reason the meeting was called is because obviously, we wanted to check in with the employees. We wanted to see how everybody was doing, evaluating, people's work schedule to make sure that everybody's staying safe and so on. So that was the point of the meeting, just so everybody's aware.
Is there a recommendation for what we should do from anybody?
Are you
Go ahead.
waiting for?
You're a little bit in and out, Greg.
Okay, I'm very new at this. What can I say to you that makes sense?
Greg, this is Mary. Just say what you're doing, what you're working, and
Okay.
what you want out of, or what your dream is about, how to handle this as far as employees go.
Well, my instant thought is that we have all been working for the community for a very long time, and during this time, we're continuing to work and do the best that we can. And therefore, I think that should be a consideration, and make sure that we all continue to get paid at a normal rate, at least for the ongoing whatever this takes. Because we all have a lot of work to catch up on after we're done. And we have a choice either to compensate us while we're out, so we continue to do our work, or we have to find something else to do to supplement our income.
And I have to totally agree. And in no way is this intention to short our employees. That's not what the intention was. It's to brainstorm on how we can obviously make those things get done during this time, and try to brainstorm of how we can, and I had mentioned to Linda, is there something that we could do upstairs? Can we have you guys stay home? So this isn't to make it so, I guess we weren't calling the meeting to necessarily say that you weren't getting paid, because I would highly, I would be on the opposite on that and trying to get you compensated and continue to get paid. We're not trying to make this difficult for anybody.
I appreciate
agree.
that.
I agree with Tammy. I'm in favor of continuing to pay you your full pay.
And I think as we look at this, I know that Tristan is being at the water and wastewater plant full time. And so as I understand, he's been able to put in his hours. I know Greg has been trying to work at home some, but I agree with Tammy and Jim. I think that we really need to continue compensating people. And I think actually, Greg, what I think you had put on some of your worksheets makes sense. We don't also know what the town might be able to get in terms of reimbursement from this kind of situation. And so to be clear, if you aren't able to do hours, that's the way to do it. That makes sense to me. We have really, really valuable employees across the spectrum of our 7 employees. And I really don't want people dealing with the added stress of thinking, how am I going to pay my bills? And Mary, you wanted to say something?
Well, I mean, I didn't raise my hand or anything, but yeah, I agree with that. And you guys know that I will support you 100% in getting all your pay in any way you can. And actually, you guys, and maybe other people, but you guys, especially if Goddard goes into effect, are probably going to be working with some hazard stuff. So the state, I think, or maybe the Fed, somebody said something about that I read about hazard pay. And if Goddard goes into effect and they find out that, yeah, there's going to be an increased wastewater load of dangerous or whatever you want to say it material, then I think you guys should be able to put in for hazard pay.
And
I don't think we can do that right now. I'm just saying that if the state covers that or if the feds cover that, then I think possibly you guys could be able to do that.
yeah, and I think going forward we should look at that.
I'm sorry, Greg, what were you saying, Greg?
Going forward, we should probably look at that, but at this point in time, we have not been immediately subjected to a hazardous environment other than being in close contact.
Right.
And so as long as we maintain that status and listen to find out what we can do in the future, that would be good.
So I guess the questions that I have, just because, just as you said earlier, Greg, in the sense of, you know, if we put people on part-time work, the work is piling up. And so is there a way, and that's more of what I wanted this meeting to be, is how can we perform the same duties that we do and still, you know, stay employed and stay efficient. So I would prefer to have the conversations of what are the jobs that are being put aside because of how we have to structure our,
Some of what we have going forward is dependent on other agencies, other sources. So that's not going to happen until it's clear. Some of what we need to do that we're not going to be able to is some service to the tanks, and we're going to put that off for a little while anyway, just because, and see how soon we can get to. A lot of what I've been trying to do is trying to clear up some of the paperwork that I've kind of ignored for some time, and also working computer stuff but I'm going to try and clear that up.
okay. So those are the things that I guess, so you're able to work some from home and still continue. I haven't kept track of the water department's hours and so on, but that's what I guess I would want to make sure that we are staying as productive and utilizing as many hours as we can on, you know, even if it's a small project or something that we put to the back burner, trying to just evaluate how can we utilize this time, downtime, if you would say, or slow time to catch up with stuff to make sure, and how can we make it so that some of you are working at home and some of you are in the office and so on. So it sounds like you guys have started to adjust that piece and look for different avenues. This might be also a good time to see, I know we have the intersection issue, and then we've all been talking about that, but this might be a great time to do some research on that as well.
Actually, I wanted to follow up with that. Some of you may or may not have been part of the select board meeting on Monday, but one of the things that we have coming down the pike, and how soon it will come down the pike, I'm not clear, is the 2020 Economic and Infrastructure Development Grant, which could also cover infrastructure like sewers. The grant application for that is not due until June if we make one. But when I was looking over the paperwork for this, one of the things I immediately noticed was infrastructure, including things like sewer lines. So that might be something else, Greg, that if you had time, you might just be thinking about, if we could ask for something, what would we want to ask for? And I also wondered, I don't know what you have in the way of written down procedures. I know Tristan has been very involved, and both of you were very involved in terms of the updating the ordinances, but whether there are procedures that could be worked on that aren't in writing that would help just make sure that we're maintaining some kind of standard practice if for some reason or other at some point we had to bring, well, we probably will at some point need to bring in some other employees. So are any of those things, would those be things you'd be able to work on?
Yes, I'm going to, actually, I'm going to look at some of those need to be updated, and I'm going to look at all of those as best as I can, and I'm going to see if I can make additions or changes to them. And Tristan will work with me on that because he's much better at some of it than I am, but I know that I can look at it. So,
Greg,
yeah.
how about the policy manual too? I mean, the policies too.
Yeah.
We need to work on that.
Great opportunities. I mean, I'm sorry that these are the circumstances, but sometimes these things really get put to the back burner and, you know, perhaps they're able to be handled. I see you, Josh. Do you have any thoughts on this? And do I have you? I don't.
Self-muting. No, that's one thing that at work we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of remote training in my day job, and there's certainly a lot of opportunities for that. Working on some of the things having to do with the 20-year evaluation, and there's a whole mess of things.
Yeah.
So are you also supportive of the wastewater employees continuing to get their full pay during this time?
Absolutely, they have plenty of things to do from home. Certainly, I know for sure there's got to be a lot of things that Greg can do while he's out.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Jim Volz?
Yes, Jim Volz.
No, are we ready for a motion?
Well, I wanted to also hear from Carol and Linda. I know they're both on the phone. So Carol, do you want to go first or Linda? Which would you rather?
I can go first.
Okay.
I did take the laptop home to do at home, to give Carol a chance to do. She has more of her work needs to be done here in the office with the records and other information that she needs. So I'm going to try to do, as the water steward, to work on some policies that I need, and I'm going to try to do more and more of that to give her the opportunity to work office and get as many hours in so that she doesn't get behind on anything. That's kind of what I'm looking at this point. I also have some grants that are pending that I need to go through to make sure they're up to date, and I will be able to do that off-site as well. Those are a couple things I'm planning to do. I'm open to suggestions from any of you, and I guess see what Carol would like to add as well.
Go ahead, Carol.
I don't have much more to add. I know it was me that kept pestering to have this meeting because I felt like we were really just left hanging and I didn't know in which direction to go. So I appreciate you calling this meeting, Sasha.
Well, it's really all three of us, I think. I don't want to take just the sole credit for that.
Right.
So going back just for a minute to you, Linda, and this is not to put a burden on you if it seems too much, one of the things that we talked about, 6 months ago, was updating the personnel policy. And I think maybe when all of us get a breath, you and I can be working on that as well if there's time for you to do that. And who knows, there may be other things like that. I also just want to check in with employees. We haven't heard from the road crew directly. And how are you guys all doing? This is a hard time.
We're doing all right.
Carol, Linda, how are you holding up? I know one of the things that may be a relief is that people can't come pounding on your window. But sometimes you get emails anyway.
Oh, don't think they're not trying.
Calls have certainly slowed down. For continue to try to do as much as we can by and that will continue. But I think it's going fairly well.
It is. My biggest concern is the constant opening of the mail, and we wear gloves and then we wash our hands and we wash the surface, and I just feel like there's so much contamination on the mail that doing the best we can.
Perhaps somebody could actually research that. I have read things that say, yeah, the mail's not too likely to be contaminated. I've read other things saying maybe it is. Another thing might be to just, take it and not open it right away unless there's something that's urgent.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I haven't researched that, but if somebody wants to get paid to research it, that sounds good to me.
Well,
I've heard.
I know.
Can I say what I've heard? Bernie Sanders has put in some letter or whatever to the Postmaster General because the post office is making people who are sick work. And I would suggest if you handle mail to use gloves, and then
I am.
Yeah, that's good. And then obviously, I know you're really careful. I know you. But then just after you're done with the mail, just make sure you disinfect everything and then take off your gloves and disinfect your hands.
I suspect part of it, though, is the stress of thinking, am I somehow making myself vulnerable by opening the mail that needs to be opened? And maybe we can be looking at, and you guys in the town clerk's office know better than I do, is there a way to sort out mentally what's urgent and what's not urgent in terms of opening mail, and then be thinking about, are there ways to not have to do that right away?
Right.
And I do think that I've seen a couple of different places that paper actually, it doesn't stay on paper as much as plastic.
No.
So I think it's a limited amount of time. So truly, if you get the mail and even put it in a box for a day and maybe have two boxes so you're rotating them so that you're, and to be very honest, I don't find there's not anything that we are currently doing that's an emergency that would put your health at risk. So I personally think that putting it in a box for a day isn't going to change anything.
I was going to say the same thing, Tammy.
I agree with Tammy.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, Carol.
And I'm also thinking, no more cash. Everyone's saying no more cash, and I think cash is absolutely filthy. And people have been calling, and I'm saying, please write a check.
So here's another thing that we could be researching. I know Linda and I talked about this a long time ago, and we just haven't gotten to it. My mom had a small piece of property in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and they had a way of paying that bill online. In fact, it was really lovely because you would get a reminder from them, your tax bill is due, and the cost to the taxpayer was something like an additional 25 cents to pay it online. And maybe we can be looking at providing that opportunity. And I know there's some other aspects that Linda talked about in terms of how that would get coordinated in terms of your books, but maybe this is another chance to look at that in the meantime. But I think we can certainly put out there relating to payments, and we could figure out the different modalities of how to put that out there is, please don't send cash because that can be adding the risk to our employees.
And so maybe what we do from here, I think that these are all great ideas, and I think that what we really need to do is kind of create a whiteboard, because I much prefer people are working on these projects that we truly, during the regular time, have not been able to kind of put it back burner. So I don't know if in all three departments we can start a whiteboard of ideas as things come up, of things that we on downtime we can utilize. So can we can we create like a whiteboard and put these ideas on, so then when somebody's slow and really feeling like, oh, I don't have anything to do, should I be taking sick time or those things, is there instead a project I could be working on? So that would be my suggestion, is maybe a whiteboard in all three departments to create some ideas going of what I can utilize, because I much prefer having these projects work on versus, again, you guys using sick time or going on unemployment. if we can do them from home. Thoughts on that?
One suggestion, go on the whiteboard.
Say that again, Greg?
Can we put on the whiteboard, procure 10 of the N95 masks so that we have them if we need them?
I think that's not a whiteboard thing. I think that that's more current. And so I think we should be seeing what we can do about getting you that. There's certain, so are there other aspects of protective equipment that you think you might need?
At this moment in time, we don't.
Okay.
We have rubber gloves, we have suits, we have those things if we need them. The only
Yeah,
thing that I'm thinking is we have gas mask type things.
I mean, like, sorry, I didn't mean masks. I meant, like the masks over your eyes.
Shields, we have shields.
Yeah, that's the word. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have those.
Okay.
So,
Are you just looking for like those paper masks? Is that what you're asking for?
The N95 approved one, the one that actually filters out these germs, these virus toxins. The other ones are, I have white masks down at the plant.
No, I know what I know what Greg's referring to. So we can follow up on seeing what we can do about getting some of those. That may be challenging. Who knows? I suppose we could first start with the local hardware store. Probably has none, but who knows? Maybe they have a few, or maybe East Montpelier does, and we could start locally and then go through emergency management for those. So thank you for mentioning that, Greg. I appreciate it.
If I could speak, this is Jim.
Yes, please.
I would just point out that, as I understand this, if you're interacting, if you're handling, if you wash your hands regularly, especially if you open the mail, then you wash your hands and you don't touch your face, that pretty much will cover you. And unless you're interacting with somebody who might sneeze on you, you don't really need a mask. So I'm not sure. I'm happy to see if we can get them, but what everybody's been saying that I've been hearing is save them for the healthcare workers who have to interact with sick people.
Yes.
Well, in terms of water and sewer, it's not really clear whether there might be some contamination. So I guess my feeling is if they think that what they're doing in their work might need some, that it would be helpful to see if we can get some. Obviously, they're not going to give them to a town for that purpose versus healthcare workers if that's the their emergency management's choice. I just want to say one other thing. I do get a lot of things about emergency management, and you probably have read some of the same things that I have. I am so impressed and touched, and it may well be that everything falls apart down the road, but I really think that what's been happening in the state of Vermont is a great deal of forward-thinking effort to try to make sure that we keep things going in a way that's reasonable. You probably are aware that both the Gutterson Fieldhouse and the Barry Auditorium, and there's another location I can't remember, have been already set up to receive overflow patients if the need happens, and relieving hospitals of having to care for everybody in a hospital. And these would obviously, or most likely, be people who didn't need respirators. But when I look at what some other states have done versus Vermont, and frankly, I think the whole project at Goddard is part of that, is saying once we get people who don't need to be hospitalized anymore, where do we put them so it's safe for the rest of the community? I'm really pleased to be part of this state, and also really pleased to work with employees like you who do such a good job day in and day out.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So,
Also,
do you want to make a motion, Jim? You said something about a motion earlier.
Well, I'll take a crack at it. I move that we continue to pay our employees their full pay during this time period. And we can revisit this issue in a month or so after we see where we are.
So is the motion that you move that we continue to pay our employees their full pay during the, I didn't get the last part, during the
COVID-19 crisis.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I would like to add to that is that,
Okay. Well, so
Um,
just my motion, do you want to move to change it, Tammy?
yes, I'd like to move to change that
Okay.
to include, I mean, I with the understanding that everybody's making the effort to put in a full 40 hours.
I guess
Mary, I know I'm not, this is Mary. I know I'm not a voter right now, but I don't agree with that. And I have to tell you that I know, one, it's really hard to get on unemployment right now. They're so backed up. I know that even if you do get on unemployment, the state's gonna, I mean, the town's probably not, I don't know if the town upper,
Mary, I'm
sorry,
not suggesting to do unemployment. I'm suggesting that what I'm saying with the employees making the effort to put the 40 hours in, even if they're getting paid. So I don't want somebody working part-time if there's projects and things that they can be working on.
Oh, well, I get that. I know
Oh,
our
that's
guys.
what, so
Yeah,
yes,
and I
so
think
I'm not suggesting that anybody goes on unemployment. We're suggesting what the motion is that we continue to pay our employees for the hourly rate that they currently have, with the understanding everybody will make efforts to fill their time with projects and other things to truly be working those 40 hours.
Okay, I got it.
So for employees, how does that feel to you? Tristan, Greg, road crew, whatever.
Okay.
Fine with me.
The road crew is not getting any slowdown anytime soon, as I can see.
No.
And as far as the water and wastewater, we typically put in more than our 40 hours every week anyway, and we don't bill the town for them. So I don't have any problem thinking that we're going to continue to do that going forward.
Perfect. That is all I'm saying, is everybody needs to still make that effort to, again, whether it's working on a project from home, whatever that be, that I want to be able to pay everybody. I don't want anybody shorted, and I don't want to have to worry about anybody to worry about unemployment, but we have to make efforts to look at projects, look at the things that are on the back burner to keep everybody going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tammy. I think I misunderstood you.
Nope,
So Jim, are you comfortable with that, with your motion being amended to include that?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so then we don't need to vote on that. We can just incorporate that into the amendment. Is there any further discussion about that? I just want to make sure that this also, we understand that this includes Linda, who is an elected employee, but she is certainly an employee of the town. So I don't think we need to include that in the motion because we're talking about all employees, but I just wanted to make sure Linda understood that that included her, because there have been some conversation about, well, how do we deal with me because I'm elected? So hearing, is there any further discussion?
I would just like to say,
I think Linda should definitely be paid.
Yeah, that's what we're proposing.
Okay, so hearing no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Jim, what's your vote?
Yay.
And Tammy?
Yay.
And me as well. So I think that covers that. We can move on to something else, or if anybody from, anybody who's a participant in the meeting wants to bring anything else up other than extending what we had also on the agenda, was extending the time for the completion of minutes.
I just have one comment.
Yes.
I just want everyone to remember that coming out the other side of this, we're going to be just absolutely a madhouse, and the workload is going to be absolutely incredible. So
I think this is another reason I think
we don't get all our hours in now, we're going to make up for it.
Was that who was speaking?
That was Carol.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
so I
and
think
that's what, whoops, sorry, Sasha. And to be very honest, Carol, that's why I wanted to start thinking about how do we participate that and get some of the things out of the way, or try to brainstorm on how that works, because we do recognize that.
Yeah.
And I think it's, and again, I don't know whether setting up some kind of automatic payment system for payment of taxes and sewer and water and things of that nature makes any sense. But if that would actually end up reducing your time, that might, there may be a number of different ways that we can make it not so crazy when things come back and people are able to come knock on the door.
And I've actually heard that towns that have switched over to that type of system where they can make payments online or even do direct payments and monthly payments and things like that, their their delinquencies go down. And there's actually, and again, I'm going from hearsay of what I've heard from other people, but their delinquencies go down, and plus they there's a profit to the town because of the amount of time spent on those things.
And I will say from my own personal experience has been, having had that system for having to pay taxes in Falmouth, where I actually get an email, and the way this particular system is currently set up, all I have to do is click on the link to the email. I don't have to do a login. It takes me to the bill. I can set up a bank account that I always use to pay it from, and it takes such a short amount of time. And I can tell you, I have sometimes done this like an hour before the deadline because I'm going, I have to do that. And it's, I think for me as a taxpayer, not anymore, the property got sold in Falmouth, but it really was a fantastic system. So maybe that's something that could be useful to the town, maybe not, because I know there's other logistics in terms of getting the tax records in, but who knows?
So can we move on to the next topic?
I think so. I think we're ready to do that.
So I move that we give Cindy more time.
Yeah, but can I, before we move on from the employees, what is the employees thought about doing a check-in in 2 weeks to make sure everybody is getting what they need?
We can.
Fine.
Does that seem like something that you guys would feel? I just want to make sure that you guys are working hard and you're continuing to work. So I just want to make sure that we are meeting your needs and getting you what you need. And even if that's a short meeting.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
So what if we did that, the regular, so we could either, I think it would be good to have a regular time so people could kind of budget that. I heard from Tristan that he'd rather have it to be after 10:30 in the morning in terms of getting testing done.
I thought Tammy was talking about our next regular board meeting.
No, she's talking about checking in with the employees.
Yeah, I was suggesting that we do it maybe 2 weeks from now, or even we can change the time. And I did apologize. I thought you had told me he wanted to do it at 10. Sorry.
No, I did say that. He said, no, Tristan said 10 was okay.
Okay. Oh, perfect. I'm sorry.
No, when I talked to him, he said he would prefer 10:30, but he said 10 would work for him. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No. So, does that would doing it on a Friday morning work for the rest of the crew? Is that a reasonable thing to do? We don't have to take so long next time, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Fine.
Does that work for the road crew?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
fine
don't
with
want
me.
people to feel like we want to hear you, and if something's not working, we need to know.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Feel free to send us an email if you have a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
So today is the 3rd. 2 weeks will be the 17th, and we could plan on that at 10:30 on the 17th.
That's fine.
Sure.
All right.
Great.
Excellent. And everybody's free to stay or leave as they like as we deal with this other small issue which relates to minutes. Whatever your pleasure is.
Thank
And
you.
our deepest appreciations for what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Tammy.
Yes,
All right,
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go. Bye.
Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
So the other issue is under the public records law, as amended for the period of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's the normal time frame for getting minutes up and in and done and posted has been 5 days, which I've always felt was a completely unreasonable period of time. The legislature actually did discuss extending it before all of this happened, but just declined to do so. We can now extend it to 10 days based on staff shortages, which could be any amount of staff shortages. Could even be me being able to figure out how to download this recording so we can get it to Cindy to prepare minutes. So my thought had been that it would be wise for us to authorize extending the time for the preparation of the completion of minutes and posting for the 10-day period, with obviously the effort to get them up as soon as we can.
So is that your motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Does that make sense to the rest of you?
I'm okay with that.
Do we have, we have to make a motion. I make a motion to amend our meeting minutes to 10 days. Recording our meeting minutes to 10 days.
During the COVID-19 crisis.
How about if we say we make a motion to amend the time frame for to 10 days in accordance with the Public Records Act, and then we can just rely on that one.
That's fine.
Does that work for you, Tammy?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So, all in favor of that? Tammy, would you like to vote first?
Aye.
And to Jim?
Aye.
And I would also agree with that. And you had something else you wanted to raise, Jim, about Cindy being able to give her more time. I think what we do is we now pay her for a certain amount of time per. It had been like for 2-hour meetings. It seems like we're having a bunch of shorter meetings. And so what's your pleasure about that, Jim?
I think it was just, yeah. I'll let you.
I want to be sure she gets paid. So is there something we need to do? Is there a problem?
I think Jim was saying more time to write up the minutes. So he was doing what we just did.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about her pay.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we need to pay her for her time, and which she had. Linda, do you remember exactly what the arrangements were in terms of? We have it in minutes from a previous meeting.
We have minutes stating the number of hours that she wanted. I'd have to look it up and send you an email. That's the best I could do.
So I'm confused, Sasha. Is there an issue with what we're doing? I think Jim's motion, or what he was trying to do, was extending the amount of time she had to get the minutes ready, not anything to do with the time. So is there currently an issue?
Right. I agree with what Tammy just said.
Oh, then we've covered it with the motion we just passed.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that we want to cover that we didn't have on the agenda? All right. So.
I think and I don't know, I'm assuming I could do this under other business, I guess. So the only thing I would like to, I guess, kind of have a conversation in reference to, like, when you're speaking with somebody that you're, and I know that, I guess a lot of people are touching base with you personally, and I totally appreciate that, because I don't really have a lot of time to do that. And so the time that you're spending speaking to people and just trying to, organize the piece with Goddard, with the state and all those, I want to express my appreciation for the time you're putting in. But if you could potentially, like, when you speak with somebody, just email out to us, so again, that we know Jim and I are staying on the same page as you are, because I definitely feel like I'm 2 steps behind on those pieces. So if we can, maybe when you speak with somebody, you tell us just who you've spoken to, and as a quick summary, not that you don't have to go into any great detail, but a quick summary on what that conversation consisted of. Then we can, if we want more details, we can always ask for those details, but at least we know who you've spoken to and what it was in reference to. So then when we're being addressed at a meeting, we at least have some process.
Right.
I think that would be helpful as a board for us just to keep on the same page.
Okay. Yes, and I've tried to. I haven't done that specifically. you know, for instance, what came up yesterday was a call from the principal assistant to the Agency of Human Services, and one of the things that it included was the Carrie Sleeper, who is the deputy secretary of the Agency of Human Services. He's also a former state trooper, long time. I knew him from when I worked in St. Johnsbury, and he was the head of the St. Johnsbury Vermont State Police Barracks. I had no idea he had moved up to these levels. But he, as a result of that conversation, and I did let you know this, but I didn't let you know exactly how it generated. We had asked to have a select board meeting this coming Monday, and it wasn't completely clear to me who would end up being the people from the state who would do that. But I was really pleased that Carrie Sleeper said he would be willing to be part of that meeting, because he's got the background, in addition to being the deputy secretary of the Agency of Human Services. He has a law enforcement background and is aware of concerns of people in the community relating to that. And also Candace Morgan, who is the principal assistant to the secretary of the Agency of Human Services, will be in on that meeting as well on Monday. I know that people there and across the state, but particularly who have been working on coming up with alternative programs like the one that is likely to be at Goddard, have been working 16-hour days, and they're just exhausted. And I imagine they're fronting questions from other locations as well. I know they've been setting up a similar program in Essex, and I think maybe one up in St. Albans and some other southern parts of the state as well. So I very much appreciated their willingness to take the time to have the meeting that Tammy had proposed for us to get an update in the community, to get an update relating to what's happening at Goddard. But I could certainly shoot you an email with a little bit more substance than just saying, hey, we were able to arrange to have these people be part of the meeting on Monday.
And again, I'm not looking for a whole bunch of detail. I just think it's important that we have a basis of who you've spoken to, and you know, what that conversation again was about. Not necessarily all the details. We can ask if we want more detail, but I think it's just important, and Jim, you can step in as well, but I think it's just important for us to understand and keep on the same page and not feel two pages behind you.
And I also just want to emphasize that in any conversation I've had with someone, including some people who have called who are upset in general, I always make it clear, you know, this is my thought and this is my opinion, if it's something that we haven't voted on, so that people are not feeling like the town has taken a position, because we have really taken virtually no positions relating to the Goddard project, and there are many other things going on. So I've had to have that conversation with people from the community as well, who have wanted me to say that the town has taken a position or should take a position. And I keep reminding them that each of us as an individual select board member really has no authority to speak for the town. That's just not permitted.
If I could jump in quick.
Yes, please.
Okay, I agree with Tammy's request, and I would just point out that had this practice been in place all along, then the misunderstanding about you having that people in the community had that you had agreed to the Goddard thing would not have happened, because you would.
That's not true. That's not true. I don't think that that's correct. I don't think that my conduct had anything to do with people making that claim. I have a close friend who made a similar claim. I haven't reached out to her yet, but there's no basis for it. She never even, you know. So I think it's just people are afraid.
You're misunderstanding my point.
Yeah.
Which is, had you sent us an email about what the exchange had been about Goddard, we would have known that you had not agreed to anything. So when people started accusing you of that to us, we could have defended you.
Well, you can know anyway. I would not do that. That's been, you know, that's just not, I've been on, whether it's on the zoning board of adjustment or whatever else, that's just not something you can do.
Yeah, right. So I know you understand. Plus it creates a memorialization.
Yeah. I think they're kind of unrelated, because I think that there's some people who feel, I think this is very frightening, and I think it brings out, sometimes with some people it brings out, you know, the warmest parts, and other people they come up with conclusions that just have no basis in fact whatsoever. And you kind of shake your head and say, well, that's interesting. I don't know where that one came from. But I appreciate your suggestion, Tammy, and I will follow up on that. And hopefully, if you feel like there's something I'm missing, feel free to get a hold of me and say, wait a minute, that wasn't good enough.
And I think it is important that, and I think I had said this in the email, that really we're not being asked. And that's where I think the misunderstanding is. The select board has not been asked. We've been asked for support and to help through this process, but we have not been asked to make a decision. And that's where, again, that needs to be reiterated, that this isn't something the town itself, it's bigger than us. And so we have not been asked to do this or not to do this. We've been asked to support and help them. That's two different things. And I kind of indicated that in my email, that really we're not being asked that question. And that's not our position in what's going on. It's not up to us. This is something that we're asked as a town to help support and help, not, to make a decision. And so I think that if we stay as united to that this really isn't us. This isn't our decision. It's not something the town is in relation to. We've been asked as a select board to help and support.
And so one of the things that in one of the conversations I had, maybe it was more than one, with somebody in town who's very, very upset, was demanding, you should have gone to court, you should have tried to stop this, why didn't you do that? Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors to that. One is, where would we find an attorney if the select board felt that we had wanted to do that? Are the courts even open? Would we even be likely to be successful? Certainly, I will admit from the beginning, my feeling has been that given what's been happening in the state could make arrangements and just say, too bad, and then not talk to us because we were being so difficult to deal with. I did talk to another individual who is an attorney who is very much involved in town government. And we were having a casual conversation. And I said, so what do you think? Do you think that the town would have been successful in trying to oppose this? And he said, no, of course not. So it was interesting to hear from somebody who is a current attorney. And I wasn't asking him for legal advice. I just knew that he was familiar with town government and had worked in this field for a long time. It was interesting personally to me to find out that at least one other person who has legal background and more current legal background than I do concurred with my feeling of this. If in an emergency, the state's going to do what it thinks it needs to do to try to meet what it thinks are the needs of the citizens. And I agree with Tammy that what we are being asked to do is to be supportive and think of ways to be supportive. And I don't know that that's a really big role in town as much as trying to mobilize people in the town to say, let's look at this in a way of how can we be supportive.
And I think being supportive in our role is what our role in this is to truly make sure that people are informed, people are getting their concerns maybe heard, not necessarily addressed, right? So just because you have a concern doesn't mean they're going to make a change. And that's
Right.
really important to know. Being heard is different than change. Because we have to determine, and I'm assuming this is where the state is at, in the sense of determining, is this something that's safe to try versus doing nothing? And it's a balancing act of, evaluating, is this something we can try? Is this something that's going to meet our needs? Or is this really going to create so much risk that we shouldn't do this? And I'm assuming they've made those decisions. So as people bring concerns to them, they're going to, again, do that evaluation of, is this concern valid? Is it something that we should, make change because of this concern? Or is it such a concern that really on the bigger picture doesn't matter? And so again, those aren't decisions we're being asked to make that decision. It's just, to me, our part in this is to make sure our community is heard. And again, that doesn't mean that we're going to make changes to everything they say, but that's our job. And I don't think anybody's asking our opinion for anything.
Well, I want to say that I think the opinions that have been expressed have helped. I don't know whether you folks have had a chance to look at the a little bit over 3 pages worth of frequently asked questions that came out from the Agency of Human Services yesterday. I forwarded it to you later in the evening, which is about when I got it. One of the things that was in there was that this project at Goddard will not house more than 100 people. And so I think that when people started talking at the meeting on Monday, that people heard that. The other thing that I think we're going to learn from Carrie Sleeper on Monday is that they actually have tightened up the procedures relating to people staying on campus and what the response would be if somebody were to leave. And I think that's in direct response to people having said things on Monday, and probably in response to me as well, having said things as an individual select board member, not as the view of the select board as a whole, but they have made some changes. So I think that we want to be aware that sometimes things, although we don't control this, we certainly, it appears that we can have some impact on how things go by
And that's what
expressing
I'm saying.
thoughts.
So that is our job, is to make sure that people have the ability to be heard, and then the state can evaluate those. And that's really the important part. And that is where because our concerns are valid. They have to weigh those and determine if there's something they can change to make that concern go away, or they can't, right? So, but that's not our position to do. So our position is just to make sure that our community members are heard, and their concerns are addressed to the state, and then we have to go from there. But again, those decisions to make those changes aren't really ours to make, it's the state. So it's great to see that, we were heard, and I think that's the important part, is our concerns are heard, so they can determine if it's important or how can they address that concern. But again, just because we're identifying a concern, we have to be clear that the state will be the one that makes that determination if changes are made or not. That's not up to us. So I just want to make sure when we're talking to people that we're just addressing that we're going to make sure their concerns are heard, but we're not making decisions in reference to that.
I agree.
What's Carrie Sleeper's role again?
Could you put your mic closer to your mouth? It's just really hard to hear. Go ahead.
What's Carrie Sleeper's role again? I didn't catch his title.
His current title is Deputy Agency of Human Services Secretary. So the Agency of Human Services is the one that's been coordinating this kind of role, although I have to say they are working very closely with the State Emergency Operations and Emergency Management Program as well. They've all been working very closely together, but this piece of putting in place this kind of resource is being handled by the Agency of Human Services.
Okay, are we winding down?
I think so. I probably should disclose, just in terms, Amos Meacham wrote a very thoughtful piece, which he posted on Facebook. And I know that the people in the state they've been putting in so many hours, and sometimes all they feel is the people and I imagine it's not just Plainfield, it's just people who are upset and angry. And so I did take the liberty of sending that on to Candace Morgan, who was the person from the Agency for Human Services who called me yesterday, and it was through her I was able to arrange the people who are going to be able to be at the meeting on Monday. And I was really glad to be able to pass that on, and I hope nobody feels upset that I did that. It was just a very thoughtful piece that he put together. And of course, he has a background in some of the population that may be being served in terms of having faced the trauma of having the COVID-19 virus and trying to recover from that. So I hope nobody feels that that was amiss to pass on that. As what I passed it on was, you might be glad to see this post that was made on Plainfield's Plainfield people on Facebook. And I did get a response back very quickly saying thank you.
It was also on Front Porch Forum. I thought it was very thoughtful, and I have no problem with what you did.
Good.
I absolutely, I thought it was very well done, and you know, as much as he was expressing questions to make people think, and I think that is a really positive way of doing this, and trying to just evaluate. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. It's not just those negative ways, and how are we helping as a community our entire state? And I think that's really important to hear.
Good, thank you. I'm glad you didn't think I was amiss.
Nope, and he had authorized anybody to paste, forward, do whatever you needed. So I think that was good.
Okay, is there anything else we need to cover?
I don't think so.
Would somebody
I
like?
move we adjourn.
It is 11 o'clock exactly, and Jim moves we adjourn. Tammy, are you in favor of that motion?
Aye.
And Jim, what about you?
I'm in favor of it.
And I am as well. So we will adjourn this motion. And thank you
Great.
again to everyone who participated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank everyone.
Jim,